The year is 2307 AD. Due to the depletion of fossil fuels, humanity is searching for a new source of power. The power was found in the form of solar-powered Dyson rings orbiting Earth and supported by 3 orbital elevators. Each orbital elevator is served by one of the 3 power blocks of the planet, which consists of the Union, the Human Reform League, and the AEU. Despite having this near inexhaustible source of power, it only seemed to benefit the major powers and its allies, which resulted in the minor countries of the world plunging into poverty and break out into constant warfare for fuel and energy. Some even believed that solar energy was evil and threatened the land of God, which resulted in the 20-year Solar Wars. This ongoing chaos led to the creation of Celestial Being, a private organization whose main goal is to end all wars and unite humanity. To accomplish this, they created 4 powerful mobile suits called Gundams, each piloted by 4 individuals called Gundam Meisters. The Meisters are Setna FCA, Lock-On Stratos, Alleluia Haptism, and Tierra Arde. Together, they carry out various missions to intervene acts of war throughout the world, while the 3 powers try to eliminate them, though a much bigger threat looms over the world. I have an interesting history with Double O. I first heard about it back around 2008, and then saw it on Sci-Fi. Needless to say, it got me back into Gundam at full force after I lost interest in it back around 2005. Though that was almost 10 years ago. So now I'm here revisiting the series for a review to see if it still holds up. The first season does some pretty interesting things. It does away with the standard full-scale warfare we have seen previously in the Siege shows in favor of telling a story that tackles some of the modern issues the world was facing at the time, such as terrorism, the depletion of fossil fuels, and questioning religious beliefs. I really liked where the season went with this, and it even has us questioning Celestial Beings' motives. Are they no better than the violent groups they swore to destroy? Does using violence to combat violence truly end all conflict? Or does it lead to a vicious cycle? This is the stuff I like in Gundam. This show got me to think about issues we face every day. I was invested in it, which is more than I could say for Seed Destiny. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about the characters. It was clear to me that the story itself was given more of a priority than the characters, because many of them don't really get a lot in terms of character development. We get to know stuff about them here and there, but for the most part they just move along with the story. This becomes a problem when you realize how fast-paced Double O is, and it ultimately begins to bite the show in the ass during Season 2, which I will get into later. I'm quite divided on the Double O boys. Tierra starts off being a total dick to everyone in Celestial Being, and will gladly eliminate anybody that puts the plan in jeopardy. He does open up to the others in time, but aside from looking rather feminine, I thought he was a pretty mediocre character. Alleluia has a split personality that definitely makes him stand out from the rest, but I find that they never really went anywhere with it, and it pretty much became irrelevant in the second season. Lock-On, particularly the first Lock-On, was my favorite out of the 4, for obvious reasons. He is easygoing and the most sociable, but deep down, he has a hatred for terrorists because of what they did to his family. I didn't care much for the second Lock-On, but I will at least say that he is a pretty skilled pilot. As for Setna, well, he definitely stands out compared to the Gundam protagonists before him. He was once a child soldier who slayed his parents to prove his loyalty to God, but ultimately became disillusioned and grew to hate conflicts in general, which led him to join Celestial Being. I feel sympathy for Setna. He was a victim of brainwashing and it turned his whole life into a battlefield. So now he is trying to not only correct his own mistakes, but also change the world using his Gundam. While his goals are definitely on the unrealistic side, it's admirable nonetheless, and at least he has no problem fighting. Saji and Louise are 2 characters that I didn't expect to like as much as I did. At first, I thought they were a waste of screen time, but then I understood what the show intended to do with them. They are normal people living normal lives that sadly get caught up in a tragedy that changes the both of them forever. It's a fear that most of us can relate to. Regarding the other characters, most of them range from to kinda cool in Season 1. Season 1, I have no problem with. I thought it was solid. It's Season 2 where things start to get rough, because they basically did away with all of the interesting elements that made Season 1 good in favor of the more traditional faction versus faction storyline, which needless to say, did not hold my interest as much as Season 1 did. Not only that, but I feel that many of the characters downgraded from what they were in Season 1. Graham went from being a pretty cool pilot that wanted to prove that he can beat a Gundam in battle, to a really shitty Char clone that barely did anything in Season 2, other than trying to 1v1 Setsuna. Alias Sashez, who was my favorite villain in the series, is reduced to playing second fiddle. It's such a damn shame. As for the true main villains of the series, I honestly don't have much to say about them. They don't really have any motives other than to take over the world and humanity. Quite the compelling villains, Sunrise. One more character to complain about here is Marina. She was completely useless to the plot. The only thing she was capable of was writing a song. And what does it honestly amount to? Nothing, that's what. I will say this about Season 2. There are some stuff that I did like about it, and the final episode is honestly pretty fun stuff, but it's still not that great. Overall, I definitely think Season 1 is a much better experience compared to Season 2. And while Season 2 is inferior, I also don't think it's unwatchable. I just think it could have gone better. Compared to Sea Destiny, 00 is a massive improvement in the presentation department. The visuals are gorgeous, the animation is very smooth, and I don't recall an instance where stock footage was utilized. Thank God. One interesting thing to note is that this was the first Gundam series to be animated in widescreen and in HD. The character designs are done by Risa Yamada, who goes by the pen name Yun Koga. I'm not familiar with her career, but she does have her own manga series called Loveless. While I think her art style is an improvement compared to Hirai Hisashi, there is one thing I can't help but point out about it, and it's that some of the male characters, particularly Tieria, tend to look more feminine, and the makers even made fun of this by putting Tieria in a dress. And yeah, he looks kinda... Getting back on topic before I say anything I regret, I like the mobile suit designs in this show for the most part. The Gundams in this show utilize a super advanced technology known as GN particles, which is used for various kinds of purposes, which includes flight and the ability to create a barrier. Later on, they are given the ability known as Transam, which basically triples their speed and gives them after images similar to the F-91. The Gundams themselves, much like the ones in Wing and Seed, all have their own gimmicks and strengths. Exia and 00 are skilled at close combat, Dynamis and Caradum are snipers, Kyrios and Arios are best suited in the air, and Virtue and Cerevi are walking powerhouses that can transform into their sleeker, arguably more powerful forms depending on the situation. The battles are some of the best in a modern Gundam series, but it has its problems. For one thing, 00 still relies on the overkill formula. If that's not your thing, you're going to have a hard time getting into the battles. The other thing is more of a personal complaint, and it's the fact that once Celestial Being acquires the O-Riser and it combines with 00, many of the challenges just start to fade away, with the 00 Riser taking the spotlight in many of the battles. Also, some of the things that it's capable of is just absolutely nuts. Overall though, despite being over 10 years old at this point, this show still looks really good. The music in this show is great. It sounds dark, which fits the tone. As far as vocal songs go, well, I like the Season 1 openings and endings much more than the ones in Season 2. But I will admit that the Season 2 songs have grown on me the more I listen to them. Now for voice acting. For the Japanese version, Setsuna is voiced by Mamoru Miyano, who had previously voiced Riku in Kingdom Hearts, as well as Light Yagami in the anime version of Death Note. He actually won a few awards for his voice acting during that time, and I can see why. He had the best performance in the show. Shinichiro Miki voices Lock-On, and he voiced Kurz from Full Metal Panic, Roy Mustang in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and even Kojiro, aka James from Pokemon. Graham's seiyuu is Yuichi Nakamura, who voiced Gray from Fairy Tail, and Alto from Macross Frontier. Yeah, I'll get to that one another day. As for the dub version, well, this was one of the last Gundam series to be licensed by Bandai Entertainment before they closed in 2012. So how does the dub hold up for me? Well, I like it. If you've seen previous Gundam shows dubbed, you'll recognize some of the actors here. Brad Swale returns once again to voice Setana, which is kind of funny considering that in Japan, Ribbons was voiced by Toru Furuya, and both men played Amuro in First Gundam. Richard Ian Cox, the voice of Inuyasha, voices Alleluia. Samuel Vincent, who previously voiced Athrun from Seed, voices Tieria, and even Scott McNeil, who is known for voicing Duo from Wing, returns as Alia Sachez. All in all, the show is good in both languages. So after revisiting 00, how do I feel about it? Well, I liked it. Do I think it's the best Gundam series ever made? Obviously not. I still don't think it holds up quite as well as something like G or X, but it is much better than the last two shows. I feel that Sunrise definitely redeemed themselves here. The first season had some interesting elements, the visuals were impressive, and the music was awesome. It does fall in a few areas though. The pacing is too fast, the characters aren't the most developed bunch I've seen in a Gundam show, and the second season just resorted to using a pretty mediocre plot. Despite that, I still made it through feeling a sense of satisfaction in the end. 00 garnered quite a bit of popularity since it came out, and converted a lot of people into Gundam fans in a similar fashion Wing and Seed did. In that regard, I highly recommend 00 to someone who wants to start watching Gundam, but doesn't want to start too far back. After 10 years, I still find it to be a solid entry in the franchise. Final score, 7 out of 10.